we started making believers out of us. They said these children don't want nothing but freedom. You ask them, what do you want? You want freedom?
How the fuck did we get here? If you're white, that question most likely is directed at the protests and demonstrations and even some rioting going on in the country right now. If you're black, you already know how the fuck we got here. And quite frankly, you're saying it's about damn time.
I'm here because I want the police to stop killing us. That's it. And I don't think it should be that hard.
But before we get to that point, I think we have to take a quick dive into the literal question of how black people arrived on these shores. The common consensus on Africans in America suggests that we began when a pirate ship named the White Lion landed on the shores of Point Comfort, Virginia in August of 1619. That ship carried, quote, 20 and odd Negroes whom were traded for victuals. This is going to be food or provisions. It's important to note that Africans had been visiting and trading with the natives in North America thousands of years before the first European ever set sail. The Egyptian king Ramesses III is even documented as taking himself and crew to the Americas as early as 445 BC. Hell, even Christopher Columbus notes in his journal that after having contact with the natives, they described black-skinned people coming from the southeast in boats and trading in gold-tipped spears. To that point, the pirate ship White Lion had stolen those enslaved Africans from another Spanish-owned slave ship called the San Juan Bautista from what we now know to be Veracruz, Mexico. The Bautista's original cargo was 350 enslaved humans from the Kimbundu tribe of what we would call now Angola. And one thing that I really want to point out and that America doesn't talk about is that America itself started off as a prison colony. Yeah, that's right. Much like Australia, America was where the Crown sent its prisoners, white, black, or other, to serve their sentence and work off their debts in indentured servitude. As a matter of fact, it's because of the American Revolution that the penal colony of Australia was established in the first place. After Americans declared their independence, the British were without a place to send their convicts. So before Africans on the continent were made to be slaves, those that arrived here came as indentured servants from Europe and assisted in defending the colonies against British rule. As a matter of fact, Crispus Attucks, a man of African and Native American heritage, was the very first person killed in defense of this land during the Boston Massacre, the pivotal point in American history that launched, of course, the Revolutionary War. And so you might be wondering how Africans in the colonies go from working and fighting alongside whites against imperial rule to being in bondage. Well, when America formally broke ties with Britain, colonists decided that they needed to establish government and financial systems. White men that had amassed the most money and influence deemed that those of white European heritage were citizens, granting them rights and giving them land. And those that did not share in this common lineage should remain bonded and work that land. The country needed to support and establish itself, and slavery was a cheaper and, dare I say, freer alternative to the indentured servitude of white Europeans. Enslaved agriculture actively propped up the fledgling U.S. economy, even as the Declaration of Independence and Constitution decried that all men are created equal. President Abraham Lincoln is quoted as saying, "Thus the thing is hid away in the Constitution, just as an afflicted man hides away a wind or a cancer, which he dares not cut out at once, lest he bleed to death." The number of enslaved humans rose from 700,000 in 1790 to over 3 million by 1850. At that time, 1 in every 3 persons in the South was enslaved, with Africans making up about 40% of the Southern population. Why such rapid growth, you ask? Cotton, and the invention of the cotton gin by Eli Whitney. At the height of slavery, over 75% of the world's cotton was produced in the U.S. Enslaved humans and the goods that they provided generated more than all of the railroads and all of the factories in America combined. The free labor afforded by slaves accounted for over 60% of American GDP. Plantation owners were able to leverage the value of enslaved humans to acquire credit with banking institutions for more enslaved humans. And these banks in turn bundled these packages of debt into what we would now call bonds and sold them worldwide. And the biggest buyer, ironically, of these bonds was Great Britain. Black people literally built up the economy of the entire world and established the system that we call capitalism. However, after years of prosperity, there was a global decline in the cotton industry and it experienced a bust. Much like the 2008 housing recession, King Cotton was deemed too big to fail. Sounds familiar, right? And the plantation owners were paid out with debts settled. America is now left wondering what to do with the enslaved workforce that it now largely no longer needs. And during this time, two things occur. The Civil War, a battle fought over the rights of wealthy white men in southern states to own human beings, and the Emancipation Proclamation signed into law by Abraham Lincoln in 1862, of course granting freedom to all enslaved people. It's also worth noting here that not only were wealthy white plantation owners paid for their losses in the cotton industry, many of them were also compensated again for the forced freeing of their enslaved humans by the federal government. And what did black people get? Nothing. Not 40 acres, not a mule. Hell, we barely got breath and air. So the Civil War leads to the Emancipation Proclamation, which leads to the period after which known as the Reconstruction. And the failure of the Reconstruction, of course, brings about Jim Crow and segregation. And all of these things bring us right into the reason we are making this video: civil rights. In part 2, we discuss how the city that I live in, Atlanta, played a pivotal role in the upward mobility of Black Americans nationwide. Stay tuned, or click next slide.